All right, guys, we're going to talk a little bit about appropriate size IV access for trauma patients, especially sick trauma patients that you're having to do blood volume resuscitation on. So the bigger you can get, the better. I've never had a trauma patient where I was frustrated that I had too large of IV access, but I have had many traumas where we couldn't get blood in fast enough. We were frustrated at the size of our IV access being too small. So the bigger you can get, the better always. The gold standard and the best is going to be a 14 gauge peripheral IV or a 9 French central line. So this is what the central line kits look like. We have 3 of them. We have a 7 French, an 8 French, and a 9 French. In the critical care carts that are in rooms 1, 2, and 3, we only stock 8 and 9 Frenches. And when they stock them, they're good about writing with a Sharpie on the outside here, so you can see easily, but it's also right here and on the end here, you can see which one it is. So the 7 French is a triple lumen line. This is great for sepsis patients and medical patients and people that you're doing like multiple medications and pressors. It is not a good trauma line. This is a triple lumen line that has one 16 gauge port, the distal port. Always use the distal port on central lines. It's going to be your biggest and shortest one. So it has a 16 gauge lumen, an 18 gauge lumen, and another 18 gauge lumen. But on that distal, which is a 16 gauge, shout out to Kenny Couch for doing lots of testing with our equipment to see what flow rates we actually got on these. But on the 7 French triple lumen on the distal port, using normal saline, he was only able to get 145 mLs a minute, which is slower than what you can get out of a 20 gauge peripheral. And that's due to the length. The longer the catheter or the lumen that you're using, the slower the infusion rate is going to be. How fast fluid will travel through something is affected by the bore size and the length of that catheter. So that's why this is a 9 French, what we love for a trauma patient. This is the 7 French. You can see there's a big difference in the length and also in the size. Matter of fact, our 9 Frenches are introducer catheters, and you can take a 7 French or an 8 French and put the whole thing right through the distal port. This introducer lumen goes into the distal lumen. So 116, 2 18s on that. On the 8 French catheters, this is better, but still not the best. You've got you've got two 14 gauge lumens on this one. And then on the 9 French catheters, you've got a 12 gauge lumen, and your distal is actually measured in French. It is a true 9 French lumen. So you can get massive volume through this. It's the shortest one of our central lines. That's the best for central lines. When it comes to the peripheral IVs, a 16 or 14 gauge IV is best with no blue hub attached to it. But if an 18 is all you can get, we'll take that. So some of the rates that Kenny was able to get using our Belmont and our catheters. Now these are with saline, so it's going to be slowed down a little bit if you're using something like blood that's going to be have more viscosity. So with a 20 gauge, he was able to get 190. On the 18 gauge with these new ones, it actually also ran at 190. But then when you bump up to a 16 gauge, it went from 190 to 480. So it's an exponential increase when you go up in catheter size. That's why it's so beneficial to get one of these, either 16 or 14 gauge peripheral line. And then the 14 gauge catheter, the Belmont maxed out at 750 mLs a minute. So the catheter wasn't even the limiting factor. Likewise on the central lines, only 145 mLs per minute out of the 7 French, 305 mLs per minute out of the 8 French, and then on the 9 French, again, the Belmont maxed out at 750. So we'll just give you like a quick example of visual. We'll infuse through a couple of these. And also, if you have this blue cap hooked up, he tested it with this. A 14 gauge peripheral IV without that blue cap, the machine maxed out at 750. When the blue cap is added, he couldn't infuse any faster than 405 mLs a minute. So it definitely does limit how fast it will infuse if you have that blue cap on. We'll just kind of show the difference on a couple of these real quick. So this is a 20 gauge peripheral IV. Helps if I unclamp it. So this Belmont is right now going at about 100 mLs a minute is all it's getting. It's going up to 130 now, but somewhere around there. It's not super fast. So in that time, we only put a little bit of NS into there. We move up to a 16 gauge and just hit the 500 infusion. Once this gets going, so you can see it's putting a lot more in there, a lot more quickly. Right now it's going at about 370. Yeah, 370. So we just did that about the same time as the 20 gauge. And you can see how much more it put in there. It's a substantial difference, especially when you have someone bleeding to death in front of you and you're really trying to get those blood products in. And then when you step up to a 9 French or 14 gauge, we do it with this one. So once it gets going, that's now going at 750 mLs a minute. And if someone's bleeding to death, that's what you want. This is how you rapidly replace blood volume. You can see how much that put in there in just a short amount of time. We've already got 400 mLs in there. So if if we hadn't done the other 2 catheters first and you were just using this, when you're going at 750 mLs a minute, your average blood bag is 300 to 350. So you're going to be able to put a bag of blood, 1 unit of blood in someone in under 30 seconds with a good line. So, and that's why in the priming I recommend using the single for your saline, and then you have these 2, and you can adjust these to where this line, notice I have this line pretty straight, so it's not kinked, but you can adjust these up and have these ready for your blood products so that you can hang a bag, spike it, unclamp it, and have that one infusing, and while that one's going, you're spiking your next one. And if you have a good line, by the time you're done spiking this one's going to be done, and you can clamp it, start this one, start spiking a new bag, and just go back and forth between these 2. So I spill fluid everywhere.